The noise reached me first, cardboard scraping metal, plastic shuffling, muffled voices trading instructions. I froze in the doorway, staring at three men in gray uniforms, systematically clearing out what had once been my office. One man balanced my Crystal Research Award, the one I'd earned just last year for advancing biological containment protocols, on top of a mound of trash bags. "Careful with that," another worker warned. "Looks pricey." "Doesn't matter," said a third, forcing my research binders into oversized industrial waste sacks. "Everything goes." My legs almost gave out. 6 weeks of radiation therapy had left me weaker than I'd expected. I clutched the doorframe, my hospital wristband still attached from my final treatment earlier that morning. "What's going on here?" The question slipped out as barely more than breath. The workers jerked upright, staring at me with widening eyes. One even dropped the binder in his hands. "Ma'am, we're just following orders," the closest one muttered, refusing to meet my eyes. Heavy footsteps echoed behind me. "Mirren, you weren't scheduled to return until next Monday." Elias, the environmental safety supervisor, stepped beside me, his expression flickering between shock and something colder. My doctor signed off early. I watched as they continued dismantling 15 years of my career. My framed diplomas had been stripped from the walls. The cabinet where I kept research samples stood empty. My personal items, including the photo of my sister and me at the top of Mount Rainier, were nowhere in sight. Where are my research files? The containment protocol drafts? My voice steadied as fear surged. Elias shifted awkwardly. "There's been a reorganization during your medical leave. Your position is being folded into general operations." "Folded?" The word scraped across my tongue. "You should talk to HR. Vega will clarify everything. I have a presentation to finalize for tomorrow." He walked off without another glance, abandoning me in the ruins of my profession. 20 minutes later, I sat across from Vega, the head of human resources. She tapped on her tablet, not even acknowledging me when I entered. "We needed the space," she said blandly, finally lifting her gaze. "The Biological Safety Committee is being overhauled. Your role no longer exists as a separate department." "I built that division from scratch," I said, leaning forward. "I authored the protocols that secured us Level 4 certification after the catastrophe at the sister site." She nudged a folder toward me. "Your work has been recognized in your severance package." "Severance?" The room wavered around me. "I'm being dismissed. Technically, your position has been consolidated. We're offering 6 months' pay, which is quite generous under the circumstances." "What circumstances?" Vega's face stayed unreadable. "The committee concluded that maintaining an independent biological containment unit wasn't financially practical. The new integrated model will improve efficiency." I left her office in a daze, gripping the severance documents. Walking through the research hall, I passed the main conference room, where Elias stood in front of a projection screen surrounded by approving department heads. "Presenting my updated containment protocols to the federal inspection team tomorrow." His voice carried through the slightly open door. "These groundbreaking methods will transform how outbreaks are handled nationwide." I stopped breathing. Those were my protocols, my findings, my legacy. For 10 years, I crafted those systems. After the cross-contamination event that killed 2 lab technicians at our sister facility, I'd testified before Congress. I restored national trust in our institution when we were on the brink of losing accreditation. And now, while I was fighting cancer, they were deleting me. In the parking lot, I sat behind the wheel watching staff toss more of my belongings into the dumpster. My hands shook as I scrolled through my phone contacts. Not my attorney, not the media. I needed someone with immediate authority. I dialed the direct line of Undersecretary Talia Winters, the woman whose brother had been one of the technicians who died, the woman who had personally recruited me to rebuild the nation's laboratory safety framework, the woman whose team was arriving tomorrow for inspection. "They're implementing unproven protocols," I told her, trying to keep my voice level. They've dismantled my entire containment system and are presenting it as new work without the safety safeguards. Her answer came instantly. I'm at the regional office 2 buildings away. Don't move. Before we go any further, thank you for taking the time to listen to my story. If you're enjoying it so far, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories like this. 1. Your support means the world to me, and I read every comment. Now, let's return to what happened next. My name is Miran Ashcraftoft. Before I became the pariah of the nation's most prestigious biological research institute, I was their top scientist, the woman who rebuilt safety protocols after the Meridian Lab disaster, which claimed 3 lives, including Undersecretary Winter's brother. I grew up in a small coastal town where my parents ran the local pharmacy. As a child, I was captivated by how medicines could transform sickness into health, but I was also terrified by the consequences when things went wrong. After losing a childhood friend to a medication error, I devoted my life to creating safety systems that would prevent such tragedies. By 30, I held 3 advanced degrees and had authored the definitive paper on biological containment failures. That paper caught the attention of the National Research Institute after their catastrophic lab breach, and they brought me in to rebuild their safety protocols from scratch. For 12 years, I poured every ounce of myself into my work. My marriage ended. You're married to your lab, Miran, not to me. Holidays were spent perfecting containment strategies, birthdays passed in clean rooms testing barrier integrity, and I missed my sister's wedding to testify before Congress on laboratory safety standards. The sacrifices felt justified. The protocols I developed became the national benchmark. Other research facilities adopted my methods, and international organizations sought my guidance. Last year, I was awarded the Crystal Award for Excellence in Research Safety, the highest honor in my field. Then came the diagnosis: Stage 3 breast cancer, aggressive treatment plan, 6 weeks of radiation after surgery. Take all the time you need, Elias had assured me, squeezing my shoulder. Your job will be waiting. I believed him. I trusted him. Elias had been hired 6 months earlier to oversee environmental safety, a separate division from mine, though occasionally overlapping. He often asked questions about my work, praising my thoroughness. Now I understood why, during my 6-week absence, Elias had systematically dismantled my department, absorbed my staff into his division, and worst of all, claimed my protocols as his own. He had stripped out critical safety redundancies to cut costs while maintaining the illusion of innovation. And tomorrow, he would present these protocols to the federal inspection team, advancing his career while putting nationwide laboratory safety at risk. Within 40 minutes of my call, 3 government SUVs arrived in the Institute's parking lot. Undersecretary Winters stepped out of the lead vehicle, her tall figure commanding immediate attention from the security team rushing to meet her. I watched from my car as she flashed her federal credentials. 2 more officials joined her, accompanied by what appeared to be a team of auditors carrying tablets and briefcases. My phone buzzed with a message from Talia: "Come to the main conference room." By the time I arrived, the executive floor was in chaos. The institute director had been summoned. Department heads clustered in corners, whispering urgently. Elias stood by the presentation screen, his face pale. Dr. Ashcraftoft. Talia greeted me formally, though we had known each other for years. Please confirm if these are your original containment protocols. She gestured toward a stack of binders, my binders that someone had clearly rescued from the trash. I nodded, throat tight. And these? She pointed to Elias's presentation on the screen. I studied the diagrams. Those were modified versions of my work, with several critical safety measures removed. Elias stepped forward. I improved on outdated systems, he said. Talia cut him off. You removed triple barrier containment for level 3 pathogens. You eliminated mandatory waiting periods between sterilization cycles. You reduced air exchange rates by 40%. The institute director paled. I wasn't aware of these specific changes. Of course you were, I said softly. I sent detailed warnings about these exact modifications last year when they were proposed as cost-saving measures. I have the emails. All eyes turned toward me. You were very ill, the director stammered. We thought perhaps you were confused. Convenient, Talia said coldly. Dr. Ashcraftoff develops cancer, so you assume her scientific judgment is compromised. Then you steal her work, strip safety measures to save money, and present it as innovation. The weight of their actions, the disaster they almost caused, hung over the room. By noon, the entire executive floor was in lockdown, Talia continued, addressing the group. As of this moment, I am initiating a facility-wide inspection. All certifications were now under review, and research grants had been temporarily frozen pending the investigation's results. Elias attempted to speak, but Talia silenced him with a single raised hand. And most concerning, she continued, we've discovered that essential safety protocols were altered without proper testing or approval. This represents a potential public health threat that requires immediate federal intervention. The blood drained from every face in the room. A potential public health emergency meant federal oversight, media scrutiny, and possible criminal charges if negligence was confirmed. I stood quietly as the weight of what I had triggered washed over me. This was no longer just about my job. This was about stopping another catastrophe, one that could have been far more devastating than the incident that took Talia's brother. As federal auditors spread through the building, confiscating documents and questioning staff, I felt a hand settle on my shoulder. We need to talk, Talia murmured, guiding me into an empty office. What she told me next would alter everything, not just for me, but for the entire institute. What I'm about to share stays between us, she said, closing the door firmly. The vacant office, sterile and cold, felt like the perfect backdrop for the truths about to unfold. She exhaled deeply. Tomorrow's inspection wasn't random. We've been investigating this institute for months. Shock rippled through me as I sank into a chair, suddenly aware of my own exhaustion. 6 months ago, we received an anonymous tip about safety violations here, she said. Nothing specific enough to act on immediately, but unsettling. When I heard you were on medical leave, I became concerned. She perched on the edge of the desk. You were our canary in the coal mine, Mirren. With you gone, I suspected they might try something. So you accelerated the inspection schedule, I said. She nodded. What I didn't expect was to find you here today, discovering your department dismantled and your work stolen. My thoughts spun, connecting pieces. The timing of my cancer diagnosis. It had been convenient for them, hadn't it? They were already preparing this. Talia's silence was confirmation enough. There's more, she finally said. We uncovered evidence that the alterations to your protocols weren't only about budget cuts. Someone has been selling simplified versions of your containment systems to private labs that would never qualify under your original standards. The realization struck me like a physical blow. They're profiting off weakened safety systems. It's worse, it's criminal, Talia corrected. And we need your help to prove it. For the first time since I stepped into my emptied office, something besides grief stirred inside me. A spark of purpose. What do you need? She laid out the plan. I would be reinstated as a special consultant to the investigation with full access to all systems and records. Officially, the Institute would claim they valued my expertise in resolving the misunderstandings regarding protocol changes. Unofficially, I would gather evidence against every person involved. They'll watch you closely, Talia warned. They know you're furious about being forced out. You must convince them you're simply grateful to have any role at all. I can do that, I said, remembering all the times I'd smiled politely while administrators dismissed vital safety concerns as excessive. One more thing, she added, lowering her voice. We believe someone very high up is involved. Be careful who you trust. The next morning, I returned to the institute wearing my most polished outfit, one that concealed the weight loss from treatment. The radiation burns across my chest ached beneath my blouse, but I pushed the discomfort aside. I had a part to play. The institute director, Ambrose, greeted me in the lobby with rehearsed warmth. "Mirren, we're so glad you're well enough to assist during this little misunderstanding." "Happy to help," I replied, mirroring his artificial enthusiasm. "I'm sure we'll clear everything up quickly." "Of course," he said, leading me toward the elevator. "Just a communication issue during your absence. Nothing intentional." Over his shoulder, I noticed Vega from HR watching us, her face unreadable. Upstairs, the executive floor buzzed with nervous tension as federal auditors occupied the main conference room, summoning department heads one after another. Staff murmured in secluded corners, rumors spreading like wildfire. Elias was nowhere to be found. "Where's my temporary workspace?" I asked, and Ambrose's smile tightened around the edges. "We assumed you'd feel most comfortable in your old office." "The office you cleared out?" I replied lightly, keeping my tone friendly. "Everything has been restored," he insisted quickly. "Just a misunderstanding regarding your return date." I nodded as if the explanation satisfied me. My office had indeed been reassembled in a rush, but incorrectly. Books sat on shelves in random order. Certificates hung crookedly on the walls. My desk items had been placed by someone unfamiliar with the space. Most concerning, the bottom drawer of my filing cabinet, where I stored my most confidential research, remained empty. I began my inquiry quietly, requesting access to the safety protocol databases under the pretense of resolving discrepancies. No one dared deny me with federal auditors roaming the halls. Each file I reviewed revealed more unsettling alterations to my work, not merely cost-cutting, deliberate dismantling of essential safeguards. By the third day, I uncovered something far worse. Digging into historical data, I discovered retroactive edits to my original protocols, timestamps altered to make it appear the diluted versions were my final recommendations. I presented the findings to Talia immediately. "They're framing you," she concluded, scanning the evidence. "If these falsified records stood, it would look like I authored those weak protocols, making me culpable for any resulting catastrophe. While they profit from selling the stripped-down versions to private labs," I added, the truth forming clearly now. "And I would have taken the blame if disaster struck." We needed to determine who approved the tampering. System logs should reveal who accessed the files. But when we checked, all access records had been wiped. Someone with top-level permissions had erased their trail. That evening, as I prepared to leave, I found a note slid under my door. "Parking garage, level 3, 7 p.m. I hesitated, recalling Talia's warning about trust. But this could be my only chance to uncover the truth. The garage was dim and unnervingly silent when I arrived. I gripped my phone, Talia's number ready. Footsteps echoed behind a concrete column, and I stiffened. "Dr. Ashcraft." I turned to see Zane, one of the IT administrators, stepping from the shadows. His usual confidence had been replaced with tense caution. "I'm risking everything by speaking to you," he whispered. "If they check the cameras, they'll know it was me." "Who's they?" "The executive committee. Not all of them, a central group controlled by Ambrose." Zane scanned the area nervously. "I was ordered to modify the timestamps on your protocols and erase the logs. But I kept backups." He handed me a small drive. "This proves exactly who made the changes and when. They've been orchestrating this for over a year, long before your diagnosis." I stared at him. Why help me? My sister worked at Helix Labs, one of the private facilities using the modified protocols. She noticed dangerous inconsistencies and raised alarms. The next day, she was fired. His expression darkened. These shortcuts could cost lives. As I slipped the drive into my pocket, an engine growled nearby. Headlights swept across us. "Go," Zane urged. "Different exits, different." They're monitoring everything. I darted toward the stairwell instead of the elevator, clutching the drive tightly. As I shoved open the stairwell door, I heard footsteps above, several people descending quickly. I froze, listening. More than one pair. I pushed back out onto level 2, weaving between cars. An elevator dinged loudly, echoing across the concrete. More arrivals. They knew about the evidence. I ducked between two trucks, crouching low, and called Talia. "Someone's coming after me in the garage," I whispered. "I have proof, but I'm cornered." "Security team is 3 minutes away," she replied urgently. "Can you reach the main exit?" I peeked between the vehicles. 2 men in dark suits scanned the area, murmuring into radios. The exit stood behind them. "No," I breathed. "They're covering it." "There's a service corridor on the south wall," Talia instructed. "Maintenance access," she instructed. "Head there. I'm sending the building schematics to your phone." Staying low, I slipped between vehicles toward the southern wall. My heartbeat thudded so violently, I worried it might betray my position. The radiation exhaustion I'd been battling all week threatened to drag me down, but adrenaline kept my legs moving. I located the service door tucked partially behind a concrete pillar. Locked. My phone buzzed with a text from Talia. 2357#. I typed in the code. The lock clicked, revealing a narrow maintenance corridor. I darted inside just as shouting erupted behind me. They'd spotted me. The passageway stretched forward, dimly lit by emergency lamps. I moved as quickly as my weakened body could, following the blueprint glowing on my screen. The tunnel would lead straight to the loading dock where Talia's team was waiting. Behind me, the service door slammed open. Footsteps pounded after me. "Stop! Security!" I pushed harder, lungs scorching. The drive pressed into my palm. The loading dock door appeared ahead, freedom only feet away. As I reached for the handle, a hand clamped onto my shoulder, spinning me around. "That's far enough, Dr. Ashcraft." Ambrose stood in front of me, flanked by 2 security officers and Vega from HR. His normally polished expression had twisted into controlled fury. "You've become remarkably inconvenient for someone who should be focused on recovery," he said, extending his hand. "The drive. Now." I pressed my back against the door, its cold metal biting through my blouse. "You tampered with my safety protocols. You risked lives to save money." "I refined outdated procedures," he argued calmly. "Your methods were excessive, inefficient. The revised protocols still meet minimum regulatory thresholds." "Minimum standards aren't enough when lives are in danger," my voice echoed through the tight corridor. "You were willing to risk another catastrophe, just like the one that killed those technicians." Something flickered sharply in his eyes. "Accidents occur in research. Progress requires risk." "Not that level of risk. Never that." I tightened my grip on the drive. "Why? Just to boost the profit margin?" Ambrose stepped closer. "The Institute was hemorrhaging funding to private competitors with lower safety costs." "So you adapted by stealing my work and destroying it," I said, the weight of the betrayal hitting me again. "And when I got sick, you took your chance." "The drive," he repeated, his tone hard as steel. Behind him, the guards shifted uneasily. Even Vega's expression wavered. "What happens when there's an outbreak because of your optimized protocols?" I demanded, raising my voice so it reached everyone. "When containment fails because you remove the triple barrier system? When people die because sterilization cycles were rushed?" One guard exchanged a nervous glance with the other. "That's enough," Ambrose barked. He motioned to the guards. "Take it from her." As they stepped toward me, the door behind me burst open. Federal agents surged into the corridor, guns raised. "Federal agents, everyone on the floor!" Chaos erupted instantly. The security guards surrendered at once, dropping to their knees with hands lifted. Vega pressed herself against the wall, shock written across her face. Ambrose lunged at me in desperation, reaching for the drive. An agent tackled him mid-movement, slamming him onto the ground. Talia stepped into the corridor, surveying the scene with grim satisfaction. Flawless timing, I muttered, my legs finally giving out as I slid down the wall. She crouched beside me. Are you all right? I placed the drive in her hand. Better than all right. We got them. But as the agent secured the hallway, reading rights and snapping cuffs, a troubling realization settled over me. The elaborate plan, the careful dismantling of safety protocols, the attempt to frame me. It felt far too large to be simple budget cuts or competitive strategy. Something deeper was at work. Something still hidden. And somehow, I knew Ambrose hadn't been the true architect of it all. The inquiry widened rapidly over the next few days. Federal agents scoured the Institute's archives, questioned staff, and confiscated equipment. Ambrose, Elias, and 3 board members were placed on administrative leave, facing potential criminal charges. Vega cooperated almost instantly, bargaining information for leniency. The drive Zane had given me held more than evidence of altered protocols. It exposed a complicated network of corruption stretching far beyond our facility. The diluted safety measures weren't just being sold to private labs, they were part of a nationwide push to weaken biosafety regulations. They're calling it an efficiency initiative, Talia explained as we reviewed the files in a secure federal room. A lobbying campaign aimed at reducing what they labeled excessive containment requirements across research centers. I examined the documents spread across the table. Who gains from weaker safety standards? Follow the money, she replied, sliding a financial ledger toward me. These revised protocols slashed operational expenses by nearly 30% for large-scale biological research, savings that translated into millions each year. The report listed 12 major research institutions that had expressed interest in adopting the streamlined methods, including government contractors managing defense-related biological programs. But one name at the bottom of the list froze my attention: Harlow Biosciences, the biggest private research conglomerate in the country, overseen by Warren Harlow. Warren Harlow, who also chaired our institute's board. Warren Harlow, who had personally hired Ambrose as director 2 years earlier. Warren Harlow, who had visited me in the hospital after my diagnosis, offering such heartfelt concern for my recovery. Talia, I said slowly, we need to take a closer look at the board. The inquiry into Harlow exposed a troubling pattern. His conglomerate had quietly purchased smaller research facilities for years, enforcing cost-cutting measures that frequently jeopardized safety. 3 separate incidents had occurred in Harlow-owned labs within the past 5 years, all quietly settled and sealed. But he wanted more. To truly maximize profits, he needed the regulations themselves to change, and to do that, he needed the credibility of a respected research institution, ours. He needed your protocols, Talia said as we connected the final pieces. Your work is the gold standard. If he could revise your methods and present them as equally effective but cheaper, he could push regulatory reform. And when I refused to compromise last year, they simply waited for a chance to remove me. Talia's expression darkened. Your cancer diagnosis wasn't just convenient, it was perfect timing. A chill crept through me. You think they knew before I did? Your annual medical exams are part of your employment file. Vega admitted upper-level health records are reviewed closely. The betrayal cut far deeper than I'd imagined. While I had been fighting for my life, they had been systematically dismantling my life's work. But we faced a major obstacle: proving Harlow's direct role. As board chair, he enjoyed perfect deniability, with Ambrose and others serving as shields between him and daily operations. We need more, I admitted, frustration tightening in my chest. Everything points to Ambrose, not Harlow. Talia nodded grimly. Harlow's too careful. His entire empire is built on using others as buffers. That night, staring at my ceiling, a thought surfaced. Harlow had one weakness: his image as a visionary in biological science. His personal brand depended on being seen as an innovator, committed to excellence and strict standards. What if we used that against him? The next morning, I presented my plan to Talia. Risky, potentially career-ending, but our best chance to expose the real architect. "You want to use yourself as bait?" she said once I finished. "I want to give Harlow exactly what he wants. Me discredited and my protocols undermined, but under my control." After hours of debate, she reluctantly agreed. We would proceed with extreme caution, building safeguards to protect me if anything went wrong. First, we crafted a careful story. Federal investigators had found subtle inconsistencies in my original research. Minor but troubling errors that cast doubt on the necessity of certain safety measures. Under scrutiny, I was re-evaluating my previous stance. We leaked this narrative through specific channels, ensuring it would reach Harlow. Then we waited. 3 days later, a message arrived from an unknown. Number: breakfast, The Grove, 8 a.m., WH, Phase 1 complete. The Grove catered exclusively to the city's elite. I arrived at 7:45, wearing a wireless transmitter developed by Talia's tech team, undetectable by standard scans. Federal agents were already positioned as staff and patrons. Warren Harlow entered precisely at 8, immaculate and radiating commanding authority. At 62, he carried the energy of a much younger man, a living endorsement for the anti-aging research his companies championed. "Mirren," he greeted warmly, taking my hands. "You look wonderful. I've been worried." "Thank you for visiting me at the hospital," I replied, bitterness hidden under practiced grace. "It meant a lot." "Of course. We're family at the Institute." He gestured for me to sit. I was troubled by the recent chaos. Ambrose's actions were unacceptable. I played my role, appearing shaken and unsure. "Everything's been overwhelming, the investigation, the questions about my protocols." Harlow leaned forward, lowering his voice conspiratorially. "Between us, I've had concerns about the long-term sustainability of your containment standards." "Really?" I kept my expression steady. "Your work is brilliant, truly," he assured me. "Groundbreaking, but perhaps overly cautious in today's research landscape." "Those standards were created because of the Meridian disaster," I reminded him. 3 people died. "A tragedy," he said solemnly, "but one that occurred under outdated systems. Your improvements prevent it from happening again, absolutely. But some aspects may be redundant, costly, without significantly increasing protection." He was probing, testing whether I was genuinely reconsidering. I gave him exactly what he hoped for: hesitation. "The investigation raised questions I hadn't considered," I admitted softly, staring into my coffee. "Some of my insistence on triple barriers might have been emotional rather than strictly scientific." Harlow's eyes brightened. "Completely understandable given the conditions under which you created the protocols. Trauma can push someone toward overcorrection." Throughout the next hour, he expertly guided the discussion, casting himself as my supporter against overly aggressive federal investigators. He proposed establishing a joint committee to adjust containment standards, with me serving as the public face, lending my reputation to the updated methods. "Imagine the breakthroughs we could achieve," he urged, sketching a picture of scientific advancement, free from unnecessary safety constraints. "Your name could stand behind both the original guidelines and their evolution. A complete legacy." "And Ambrose?" I pressed. "And Elias?" Harlow brushed it aside. "Regrettable casualties. They enacted changes without proper approval. Our approach would be systematic, defensible." As breakfast wrapped up, Harlow presented his proposition: an executive role as Chief Safety Innovation Officer at Harlow Biosciences. Twice my former salary and prominent attribution on every revised standard. "Think it over," he said, signing the bill. "Together, we could reshape the future of biological research. I agreed to reflect on it, and we separated, him certain he'd succeeded, me aware we had captured every second, though the recording itself still wasn't enough. We needed him to openly confirm awareness of the unlawful modifications. For Phase 2, I had to press further. 2 days afterward, I requested another meeting, this time in his own office. "I've examined your proposal," I told him, seated across from his enormous desk overlooking the city's skyline. "But before I accept anything, I need to understand precisely what occurred with my protocols while I was absent." Harlow analyzed me intently. "How much do you know?" "I know Ambrose approved alterations that eliminated essential safety components. I know Elias carried them out. What I don't know is who conceived the idea." His expression stayed composed, though something flickered behind his gaze. "Does it matter? We're discussing progress, not digging into the past." "It matters to me," I countered. "I need to know whether this was solely Ambrose or part of a larger plan." Harlow evaluated me for a long moment before reaching a conclusion. "The efficiency initiative was my creation," he admitted, rising to pour himself a drink. 3 years in development, we pinpointed specific containment procedures that could be adjusted without disastrous risk." "Without disastrous risk," I echoed, meaning some additional danger was acceptable. "Calculated risk," he corrected seamlessly. "All scientific work requires balancing protection with advancement. Your standards, though commendable, skewed too heavily toward caution. So you instructed Ambrose to enforce these alterations while I was undergoing cancer treatment." I kept my tone steady despite the fury twisting inside me. Harlow tasted his drink. The timing was advantageous. "Yes, you were immovable on certain details. We needed to demonstrate the practicality of modified protocols without continuous obstruction. They took my research. They erased my name from my own work." "A regrettable excess," he conceded. "Ambrose misinterpreted my goals. I intended your work to be adjusted, not erased. Your name supplies the credibility we require." And there it was, the confession we'd been hunting, captured by the recording device concealed within my watch. He had deliberately approved the unlawful alteration of established safety protocols, endangering countless lives for financial gain. But I wasn't done. "One last question," I said, reaching into my bag. "Did you know about my cancer before I did?" Harlow paused briefly, then composed himself. "What are you implying?" I slid a folder onto his desk. "My medical files from 6 months prior. My blood work showed early warning signs that were marked for further testing. That follow-up was postponed by 2 months, enough time for the cancer to progress to stage 3. I've wondered about that ever since." His expression stayed controlled, but a faint tick pulsed in his jaw. "According to Vega in HR, you personally evaluate medical reports for senior staff. You would have seen these results before I ever did." "That's ridiculous," he snapped. "Why would I stall your diagnosis?" "Because you needed time," I murmured. "Time to position Elias, to prepare Ambrose, to set everything in motion before I became too sick to resist. You can't prove any of that." I smiled then, the first genuine smile I'd shown in front of him. "Actually, I can. Vega kept her own documentation, including your instructions concerning my medical information." I rose, gathering my belongings. "Federal agents are searching your residence and office right now, backed by warrants based on the evidence we've already uncovered. I'm sure they'll find even more." The color drained from his face as the truth settled in. "This entire conversation has been recorded." "Yes." I stepped toward the exit, and right on cue, just as during our breakfast meeting, the door opened. Talia entered, followed by a team of federal agents. "Warren Harlow," she declared formally, "you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, reckless endangerment, and corporate espionage." I watched as they escorted him out, his empire collapsing around him. The man who viewed my illness as an opportunity, who tried to erase me and twist my life's work, reduced to yet another white-collar criminal moving through the system. 1 month later, I stood before a congressional committee, giving testimony about the coordinated attempt to weaken biological safety standards. My protocols were restored nationwide with additional safeguards to prevent future exploitation. The new legislation reinforcing research safety regulations was named the Meridian Act, honoring the technicians lost in the initial tragedy, including Talia's brother. As for me, I accepted the role of Federal Director of Biological Safety Standards, with the authority to inspect any research facility in the nation without prior notice. When Harlow's trial ended with a 30-year sentence, reporters asked whether I felt vindicated. This was never about revenge, I answered honestly. It was about protecting people from those who prize profit over human life. But seeing him led away in cuffs, knowing he would spend the rest of his days behind bars while my protocols safeguarded countless others, that felt like justice. Thank you for staying with me through this story. If it resonated with you, please hit that like button and consider subscribing for more true accounts of justice served. Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever stood up to someone powerful who tried to erase your work? Your support helps stories like this reach people who need to hear them. Until next time, remember, sometimes the strongest weapon against corruption is simply refusing to disappear.